Our first keynote speaker is Ms. Arti Ahluwalia, a visionary leader who fosters sustainable development, social transformation, and innovative solution across sectors. Ms. Arti is currently the India Chair for Ecocivilisation, a global movement active in more than 45 countries. She is also a co-founder of Living Cities Earth, the Zero Emission Consortium, and the Social Systems Lab, which champions integrated approaches to ecological balance and social equity. She is also the director of her family business called Dimex India, which works in the construction sector. Ms. Arti is the developer of the Be Well framework, a groundbreaking multi-stakeholder behavior and well-being framework for adolescent children. Since 2015, the framework has been impacting communities across 7 Indian states, addressing challenges ranging from terrorism and right victimization to prison reform and youth empowerment. On the global stage, she serves as the United Nations Commons Cluster Strategy Coordinator and is its chief editor for advocacy at the UN High-Level Political Forum 2023 and 2024 and the UN SDG Summit, UN Civil Society Development. Her contribution reflects a commitment to aligning grassroots effort with international goals for sustainability and equity. Today, Ms. Arti will share her perspective on the theme of today's session, which is Policy and Progress, Driving Gender Equity in Science and Technology. Welcome, Arti ji.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey, and it is a pleasure to be here. Greetings, everybody. I'm extremely thankful and full of gratitude to Amma for creating this space, for opening this dialogue, for getting us together to think together. I do have some interesting, I would say, facts for you, and I invite you to align with these facts to think for yourselves as to what do these indicate. And with that, I'd like to go forward, if I can. All right. Is this the, yeah, all right. So let's see, what is it that we're going to actually talk about in the next 15 minutes? The first thing is, how do we understand technology as of today? How are we looking or viewing technology? What is our definition of technology? And is it a cross-cutting theme, or can we look at it in isolation? Can we any longer look at it in isolation? The second thing that we're going to talk about is, do we have a good review as far as the state of affairs of the world is concerned? So I would like to share some of the good reviews with you in the India context, and then we move on to what is the status quo vis-a-vis the good review, and of course, what are the solutions that we have? What are the options do we have? So ecosystems as an option, that's a dead giveaway, but I'd already like to set the base so we start thinking about the numbers that you're going to see next. Coming to technology, I think these are some of the highest impact sectors if you were to consider. From an ecological disbalance point of view, from a community vulnerability point of view, from a business practices and the tradition of business within the country. From each of these perspectives, when you look at it, these are the sectors that make the biggest impact. So, and over the next 15 minutes, I'm also going to dive into what do we really refer to when we talk about each of these sectors. So when we look at digital technologies, manufacturing, infrastructure, energies and utilities, and of course, heavy engineering, what do these entail? Some of the research that I did was from various sources, and I'd like to cite that here. At any point of time, if you're interested in reading these articles, you can definitely get in touch with me, and I'd point you to the right direction. Let's look at the good review. The first thing that you see here is India is the 5th largest economy in the world today, and it's destined to become the 3rd largest. Now, this is a good review because it helps us find ourselves in the context of how are we going to push the boundaries to become the 3rd largest country in the world. Each one of us is present in the country for a certain reason. Have we discovered what that reason is? Are we defining our pathway in the context of growth? What does growth really mean to us? Is it only technological? Is it only infrastructural? Or also inner engineering? about which we're going to talk about in a bit. The second aspect of the review is in 2024, India moved up to the 5th position as the world's most favored destination for foreign or global investments, which means the world's ready to give you money. The world's ready to give us money so that we can do something better than what we've done so far. The third good review that I have for you is digital technology, infrastructure, and energy are showing an upswing as far as inclusion is concerned. So these are the 3 sectors in our country where you would see a lot more inclusion than before. And these are the fields that are predominantly male-dominated. So that's a good review. But let's look at the status quo. Pops up on your screen. We're 500 million people working in this country, out of which 76.8% are men, 32.8% are women. That's skewed. And the next figure shows you that 40% girls are in STEM education, whereas 14% are in the workforce. I'd like to keep this as a keynote, but I'd also love to open this discussion and maybe capture 1 or 2 responses of what you feel when you look at these figures. I'm going to overload you with data so that we can all find ourselves in the context, because these are the pointers that we need to know, we need to be aware of to make our own individual personal decisions and become a part of what we are calling, as of today, the much necessary nation building. Climate change and generative AI are the 2 biggest disrupting factors in the emerging future. So when you look at generative AI, it is actually demanding from us that we build protocols that are human enough, that are ethical enough, that humanize the use and engagement of technology and with technology. Let's start with digital technology. Like I said, that what do we think of technology? What are the sectors that are included within the paradigm of technology, or within the let's say, the header called technology? Digital tech in our country is one of the best performing sectors. Let me say that already. And I'm sure some of you would also substantiate this with your own experiences and your own data sets. So 50 to 60% of global tech ops is delivered from our country. A big round of applause. 30% women are in the workforce, out of which 7 to 13% are in leadership. When you look at 17 to 13%, what is the opposite of that? 87 to 93% are not women. Urban participation is much greater than the rural, which means that there is a huge population that has still not been mobilized. There is still a huge population of women that nobody is paying attention to, or the attention is being paid only on the fringes because it's easier, it's convenient, but let me also say it's also a stopgap arrangement before we start attaching ourselves to the reality. When we look at infrastructure and energy, this is a high impact zone, by the way. Infrastructure is messing up ecologies countrywide, worldwide, because of the excessive concretization of spaces that is depleting the water tables, and the whole cycle continues. So, while I go through the figures, let me also remind you that each one of us is a part of a much bigger system. And the more we expand our boundaries of understanding and finding ourselves in the context of that system, the more justice we will do to the resources we have at hand, the very fact that we're sitting next to each other as live, healthy people. So bringing back the respect within ourselves to our ecosystem, our planet, our capability, our institutions, lies at the core of being alive at all. Let's look at some of the other scary figures. So infrastructure and energy, when we look at this field, what do we mean by it? What does it entail? What do people do in here? And this is specifically for the students present amongst the audience. So you look at civil engineering, you look at architecture, you look at construction management, energy technologies. Transition road mapping is a huge one because we are aiming for energy transition at, I would say, a multi-sectoral level, right? So if you look at the figures, 25% women are in construction, and those are mainly construction workers that we've captured here. And remember, this review is based on a whole lot of research that went into from PwC to ENY and ResearchGate articles, right? 12% women, so 1.4% in leadership. And construction is one of the most devastating sectors. I represent that industry here. But I know it has created the maximum disbalance. And 1.4% women in leadership clearly shows us that there's a dominant side to how the industry is understood and what it executes. Then we have 12% women in energy and about 11% in the leadership. That's ghastly. Heavy engineering. This is the final one. So we've got space equipment, mining, defense, turbines, shipbuilding, locomotive, steel, aerospace, 3% women in the sector, and zero data on the leadership. Allow me to share an experience. About 3 months ago, I was at an infrastructure exhibition where I must have seen about 100,000 men walking the premises, and the only women that were present were wearing makeup, short clothes, and as hostesses. To me, it was a slap in the face in year 2024 when we've lived for so long and still fighting for women's rights. I think it's extremely insulting as a human race that it's taken us so long and we're still not ready to understand what our life position is. True, not true. This was another, at one of the UN Women conferences that I was invited to, and this is annual stock taking. I had a 90-minute slot, and I said, I will take 10 seconds with you, and then we're free to go and free to discuss the usual that all of us know. And the truth is that let's make the world such a place that we do not need a UN Women's Council. What will it take? Ecosystems. Understanding ourselves in the context of ecosystems. What is my life location today? And if you notice, I've been using this phrase for the last 10 minutes. Life location is about what defines me. Some of us are really proficient artists sitting amongst us, and I would invite you to agree to the point that in painting, there's a technique called voids and spaces, where you paint the entire canvas, and what remains as an empty space is what defines the image. This is exactly who we are. We are created and defined by everything around us, and we think that it is us that defines everything else. So if you look at it, thank you, ma'am. If you look at it, systems. Yesterday we had a very interesting session from Priya talking about systems thinking and how everything needs to be thought through in the context of systems. So it's about gaining that 70,000 feet above the ground perspective and then swooping down to see what's close. So you have to continually keep doing that to make the evaluation if you're doing the right things, if you're choosing the right things, if you're connecting the right things, if you're understanding the extent of the things at all. Right? So when we look at systems, they come into being when we perceive them. Clearly, we are a part of all of them. It's not the other way around. So when we want to understand ecosystems, ecology definitely, and if you remember right in the beginning, generative AI and climate change are going to be the biggest disruptors of how we function, how we exist, how we thrive on this planet, or how we don't. Here's a little, on a lighthearted, I would say, side of things. If we want to understand ecosystems, please understand that everything is interconnected. Our fears, our dreams, our knowledge, wisdom, aspirations, choices, families, livelihoods, institutions, governance, society and communities, our land, our weather, our willful participation or the lack of it in the systems. So this goes out again to all the students present here that make your choices in alignment with how you see the world unfold in front of you and keep a tab and a track of that. Be invested, be information hungry. Have the want to know. I'd like to close this talk by giving you another insight as to where we are headed. 2% of the surveyed CEOs by PwC are seeking what I love to call nature-reverent solutions. Sustainability, for me, has become a very clinical industrial term. It, I think, has died before it could live. I think the next best step for us to achieve and align ourselves with is nature-reverent systems, technologies, processes, intentions, policies. Everything that we want done, every intention that we hold, is translated into a policy or not. So good policies show good intentions, bad policies show bad intentions. It's not difficult to figure out, right? NASSCOM did a review and said we are about 4.5 million people in the best performing sector. By next year, we need 30 million people. And that's going to add about, interesting. How much money? 540 billion to the Indian economy. Are we able to find ourselves in these figures? Are we able to see the deficit of thinking, the deficit of coming together, the deficit of intentionality, the deficit of how we are keeping control over our future, and the length, extent, breadth, spectrum, depth of what we can do together? Thank you very much. I hope this was insightful. It was direction building. I'm open for any questions.